Wham! Talk 1600. You're catching the drift. Conservative talk. Intelligent conversations on local, state, and national issues with Gary Wellings, chief editor of the Current newspaper and Current Online. Join in the conversation at 734-822-1600. And now, your host, Gary Wellings.
And good Saturday afternoon. Thanks for tuning in to catch our drift. Joining me in studio, the impeccable Ipsy Ed Bonderenka.
Hey, man. Good to see you back. It is so good to have you back. Don't leave again, please. I can't take the hate mail.
It's good to be back. Did you get any hate mail?
No, I didn't get it.
I was going to say, come on. How could you get hate mail from this show of all people? Come on. We are full of love and health and happiness on this show, right? Derek, don't shake your head, Derek. You know it's not true, right? Okay, well, welcome to The Drift, and what we do every Saturday on The Drift is talk about the news.
You need to know.
Really? 2 weeks out, and you already screwed it up. How'd you do
the
that?
News?
I didn't finish. TheDailyDrift.com. Now.
The news you need to know.
There you go. Man, I can't leave you alone for 2 weeks.
You were right. They don't work right. There was an echo delay in there. You're right.
Yes. Well, welcome back, and thank you all for tuning in. It's had 2 weeks off, one for the holiday and one for some personal business. And thank you so much for you and Linda for filling in for me. It was awesome.
No problem. It was fun. We did it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. That's right. We just do it at
I think some people were afraid that you weren't coming back. So I want to encourage everybody. You won't be subjected to that much more. Gary's going to be here. We're going to chain him in, drag him in, get the police after him.
Sometimes you got to take a little time off. You know what I mean? I work 5 days a week, right? And then I have to come in and do this job on Saturdays.
And you prep for it through the week. And you do the drift. You do the drift.com, thedailydrift.com.
Yeah, so if you're not going to thedailydrift.com, do it. It's the news you
need to know.
Yes, exactly. So, and let's take care of our sponsor this half hour, is Burroughs Roadhouse. If you're looking for something to do tonight, Saturday, out in West Brighton, 5311 Brighton Road, you can call 810-227-6000. Burroughs Roadhouse has some great entertainment. They've got great food. They pour a mean drink. And it's really a great atmosphere, one of the best restaurants I've ever been to for atmosphere.
It's a destination.
It is a destination restaurant. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. 810-227-6000. Call them up. You might need to make reservations. And they do some comedy shows, and they do music occasionally. And you just got to kind of get in there and see what's happening. And you can find coupons. They even do a Sunday brunch, $15 for a Sunday brunch in the Current, COURANTonline.com. Check it out. You can pull coupons right out for all our advertisers there. But Burroughs Roadhouse, West Brighton, destination restaurant for sure. 810-227-6000. Okay, so we're going to start out with Steinle, right? The case that has outraged America. And I think you obviously this hits home for you, right? So
yes, it does.
You've got something that you want to talk about. And I encourage listeners to call in. We want your opinion. 734-822-1600.
Been away a while.
I've been away a while. I'm off my game a little bit. But let's start with Derek. Do you have track 3? Let's just get everyone up to speed with what happened with Garcia Zarate, who was found not guilty.
Acquitted undocumented immigrant Jose Inez Garcia Zarate on the most serious charges, murder and manslaughter. The only conviction, felony possession of a firearm. Tonight, the reaction is pouring in from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. Andrea Borba begins our team coverage. She was in the courtroom when the verdict came down. Tonight, she's on Pier 14, where Kate Steinle was killed. Andrea?
Elizabeth, Ken, this story began here on July 1st, 2015. Tonight, a small crowd has gathered here on Pier 14. They are lighting candles and putting up flags near where Kate Steinle was killed following today's stunning verdict in the Hall of Justice. 6 days of deliberation in the case of Jose Inez Garcia Zarate ended with a hug between the suspect and his public defender, Matt Gonzalez. 2 years after Kate Steinle was killed on Pier 14, the only guilty verdict for Mr. Zarate was for being a felon in possession of a firearm.
The verdict that came in today was not one we were hoping for.
Public defender Matt Gonzalez argued that the gun went off accidentally before a bullet ricocheted off the concrete pier and struck Steinle in the back. It was the first time a ricochet bullet case was charged as a first-degree murder in San Francisco.
Okay. So that was actually the first time that I heard that it was a ricochet bullet. I'd never heard that before. In all these months of this case happening from day one, I'd never heard before that it was a ricochet bullet.
I have been here. Well, yes, and it hadn't been emphasized, but I had heard it a few times where I was aware of it. But what I hadn't heard of until recently was that there were supposedly 3 shots fired. And then actually Tucker Carlson had somebody on his show the other night, and he mentioned 3 shots, and she corrected him, and I think she's an expert on the case, and she said, no, there was only 1 shot fired. I've heard other people say 3 shots.
Okay.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, and part of this goes, and so we don't, as the average Joes, we didn't hear all the testimony. We don't have all that. We can obviously look it up. I can't because I just don't have time.
I tried. I couldn't.
So I kind of want to reserve some of mine, and that people may say, Gary, where are you at on this? Well, I'm not privy to all the information. I don't have it with me, so I can't.
Well, you weren't a juror.
I wasn't a juror.
But the jurors didn't get all the information either.
Yeah. So they nailed him on being a felon in possession of a firearm, right?
Yeah.
I still believe he's guilty of manslaughter. Accident, no accident, it's manslaughter. And maybe, I don't know, first, second, third, I'm not an expert when it comes to the degrees of murder. Maybe more than that. Maybe not first-degree murder.
There's involuntary.
Okay. But it's definitely manslaughter. And how these rubes in San Francisco could not have at least done him on manslaughter. There was not justice applied in this case, period. That's the way I look at it.
Oh, I feel that way 100%. I was telling you the story earlier. You want me to tell you now?
Yeah. And bring people up to speed on the possession of felony firearm.
All right. So what happened is years ago, my son was involved in what you might consider a lab experiment, like I did when I was younger, and I did not encourage him in this, but we played with black powder and we blew things up, and nobody said anything. It was a rural area. Well, my son did that shortly after the Mueller building. And he and a number of people got arrested. So
Mueller building, Oklahoma bombing.
So
people know.
Right. So people were sensitive. And at the same time, shortly after, some kids were doing the same thing in Saline, and something about train wrecking. Supposedly they were trying to do some train wrecking. My son was not involved in that, let's be clear. But he and some friends were building pipe bombs and blowing them off. I'm not saying he was totally an innocent person or anything, but he went to prison for 1.5 years, so he became a convicted felon. He was 18. He had just turned 18, so didn't go juvenile on it. So 10 years later, another kid that was involved with that, who had gone on to become a career criminal after his arrest and conviction and incarceration, met up with my son and encouraged him to engage in an illegal event where the guy knew a guy who had a gun collection, and the guy he knew stole the guns. My son stored them for him and was involved with their transfer. And there was an informant. The feds had an informant. So basically they were selling to an informant. I just reviewed a few days ago for other reasons. I just reviewed all the transcripts and the sentencing guidelines. This is very important. Sentencing guidelines. There are guidelines for sentencing. And actually, they wanted to give my son 20 years as it is. He got 10. So as part of his getting 10 years in the Fed program, nobody died. There was not a shot fired. And yet he got this for felon in possession, and also the fact that a crime was committed with during the commission of a theft of firearms, but also it was mostly firearm felon possession. And that's where this guy, Zapata is his name?
Zarate.
Zarate.
Yes.
Okay, so this guy was a felon in possession. Definitely involuntary manslaughter at the very least. And the guy gets off on basically time served, 2 years, and my son is still in prison. Yeah. I'm a little bit upset about this.
Right. Right. This is a travesty of justice any way you look at it. Now, even if he did not intentionally aim and shoot at the young lady, you're still guilty of possession.
Yeah.
Of holding. And don't tell me he just picked it up and found it.
He didn't just pick it up. No.
Right. You were in possession. You probably bought it or stole it. Whatever he did, he's still responsible.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it looks like the DOJ now is going to prosecute him federally, as opposed to letting the state handle it.
But the terms they were prosecuting him on, I believe, were more immigration-related from what I heard, and they weren't firearms, which is what I don't understand. We're talking about firearms. This should have been a federal prosecution right from the first.
Yeah. Well, it's a travesty. It really is. So, well, my condolences to you.
Oh, thanks.
And justice is not always fair, and sometimes our kids do things.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it is what it is. But, well, Joe wants to call and talk about, obviously, the Senate race, Debbie Stabenow, which we're now all seeing the commercials starting on television. And, Joe, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Joe
thanks.
Show.
Yeah, you're seeing the chemical industry and the home builders union put out a completely manure-filled ad for Debbie Stabenow. That's what you were referring to. It's all over local TV. Just complete garbage that she's putting Michigan first. But I'm calling mainly for two things: the Conyers sex scandal and the tax reform. First, the sex scandal. Debbie Stabenow said, "Sexual harassment is always unacceptable. I support, the news is deeply disturbing. I support a full review of congressional sexual harassment policies and procedures and actions to address this serious problem." In other words, she wants to bury it in committee until such time as it can blow over.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because that's what Debbie Stabenow does.
SOP.
Her and Gary Peters will always follow the Democratic Party line. They will do whatever it takes to protect Democrats, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and yet do nothing for the people of the state of Michigan. Mm-hmm. Absolutely nothing. So people, for God's sake, this year, or 2018, do not vote for Debbie Stabenow. Please. She is ruining our country, and she's going to ruin the state of Michigan if she continues. So you've got to get away from voting for Debbie Stabenow.
She and Peters voted, she and Peters voted against tax relief for the voters of the state of Michigan. That's what they did.
Yep. I was going to get to that. I want to still finish with Conyers and Franken. Obviously, she's in the Senate, so Franken's more related. But everyone remembers Todd Corser and Cindy Gamrat railroaded out of Lansing because it was alleged they may have misused office funds to further their affair. Yet it's on record that Conyers had used his office federal funds to fly in bimbos for sex into D.C. Where is their demand for the same justice and expulsion for misuse of funds?
Yeah, well, you're not going to get it because the Democrats will protect John Conyers. He's an icon, according to Pelosi, who then flip-flopped and said he should resign.
Yeah, well, Pelosi has no problem with him resigning because she knows that Detroit's just going to elect another Democrat in his place. So it's no big worry there.
Yeah,
possibly Monica, a convicted felon.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Of course, yeah.
They'll pull the same thing that Debbie Dingle. Yes, yeah. We'll keep that in the princess seat or whatever they want to call it there, or it'll end up being Coleman Young Jr. Right?
Yep, Debbie Dingle's the same thing. Not willing to hold anyone accountable, but of course they shot their mouth off about Roy Moore. Now, the tax reform, of course, it will surprise no one that Stabenow and Peters both voted no for tax cuts, no to economic growth. But it's even worse than that for people who are a member of my group, which you are. Thanks a lot, Debbie, not Facebook group, to help fight and retire Debbie. You know that not only has she tried to not vote against simplification, she introduced legislation to further complicate it. People are starving in this country. People are homeless. People need clothes. And what did she want to do? She wanted to give her rich Democrat friends a tax deduction for funding the arts. Let's not give to charity to feed or clothe or house people. She wants to fund the arts and give a tax break for that, further complicating the code.
Yeah, more hypocrisy for the Democrats. Well, you're spot on, Joe. It's good to hear from you again. Good to be back.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are back, and it was a good. Ed did a good job of editing last week's show for the tape. It was good to hear the Linda interview again. It's nice that Wham is a Whamily. It's good to know about Linda, the owner.